Hello and welcome to our Point of View special, coming to you from Field Days 2013. I'm John Watson. Well, joining me first is Labour's primary industry spokesperson, Damien O'Connor. Damien, thank you for coming on the show. First question, the theme for this year's Field Days is getting down to business in the global economy. How well do you think that we're doing at that?
We're doing okay. I think a lot of it is trading off our reputation built up over many, many years, of course. There's been some very good structures like the Dairy Board, flowing on through the Frontiera. We've got Zespri. We've had good meat exports. We've got a reputation for integrity, for safe food, and that's put us in a really good position. But clearly big challenges ahead, changing markets, and I guess there are many questions about how well we can do, and for the farmers, can they continue to be profitable?
Our exports to China have gone from $2.1 billion in 2007 up to $6.9 billion now. Are we putting too many of our eggs in one basket with China?
Well, we've got to make sure we don't forget our existing markets, because in Europe still a lot of people, a lot of wealth, they want quality products, and so we've got to be careful that in our newfound enthusiasm for China that we don't divert product that may be wanted in Europe. So it's going to be balancing. We can only feed 40 million people. We're talking about kind of hundreds of millions of people out there as potential customers. We've got to make sure that there's a strategic approach to it. That is, that we don't burn off customers, that we continue to build market opportunities, and they will be in Europe and the US as they have been in the past, as well as in Asia. So, big calls for people in companies and key positions, and hopefully they'll make the right ones.
Nathan Guy said that you did a U-turn on the Ruataniwha water storage project. Did you do a U-turn, and why?
Well, good politics there by Nathan Guy. Look, Shane Jones and I went up there, had a look at the scheme on the ground, could see the logic of it, could see the potential benefit and value of it, and said, but still a long way to go before they get any endorsement by the local community, endorsement by local councils. Our local Member of Parliament, or ex-Member of Parliament up there, on the ground said, hold on, the mayors haven't endorsed this. There's a relatively low uptake by many of the potential beneficiary farmers, and there are still a whole lot of questions around the cost of it. So he's put a word of caution into it. We understand the value of irrigation, of water capture, and what we can do with that, and we still support that, both as a party and as an individual. But we've got to make sure that it's actually firstly going to be used smartly, and there'll be some people in Hawke's Bay who are unsure about this, don't want a whole lot of dairy farms in an area that might be sensitive in terms of nitrogen and phosphate. So we are taking a more holistic approach to farming now, that is we, the community and government. So we've got to make sure where we have water storage that we have sustainable farming practices coming out of that. The issue at Ruataniwha is the local buy-in to a project still yet to get full endorsement. And if it depends on a huge amount of government funding, then it might not get that. If it depends upon a small amount to finish off a project that has buy-in from the community, that has buy-in from the industry, and that is sensibly costed and sustainable, then I'm sure we would look at it and step up and support it.
So are you saying no to the Ruataniwha dam, or are you saying more investigation is needed?
A whole lot more investigation is needed. Every stakeholder in that should say that, because there's too many unknowns. I know the regional council is pushing. I had a meeting with them last week, and it's great. They should keep me updated. I welcome the information, but there's still a lot of water to go down that river before they put a dam on it.
Now, the recent hold-up of shipments of our meat in Chinese ports, was that just a question of paperwork, or was there more involved?
Well, I'd say it's a very tricky situation there. I think the Minister knew before he announced what was going on over there. The Prime Minister had just had a big trade delegation through China. He told us that he'd sorted out the certification for some meat plants. I don't know whether that stirred up a storm or whether it caused officials to look again at the certificates, but clearly a dilemma that should never have occurred. The Minister said that himself. It is unfair for the Minister then to blame the officials, because they formed the Ministry of Primary Industries, they restructured all those areas of really important certification, and they created the problem. So, I think the guys on the ground in MPI, and there are too few of them in this area, they've been struggling to keep up. And so they need more resources. I think, it probably had, some issues of China trade concerns, but clearly the certificates weren't right. And then we've gone back to an old defunct Food Safety Authority to provide certification for our meat. It's not good enough, and that should never have occurred. And it's up to us in China, if there's enough of us, to find out what is going on behind the scenes. That's MFAT, it's our diplomats, and having people from MPI on the ground. There's one, I understand. The Minister said there's going to be two now, that's great. That might not be sufficient, given this is the single biggest growing market, the single most important market at this point. We need to put resources in there equivalent to the potential benefit for our country. And I think that the squeeze that has gone on across all government departments has meant that we're caught short here. We should have had an alert to that. If there were any potential issues around trade protection, we step in there, make sure there are no excuses for the Chinese to block our imports. The fact that there were excuses meant that this occurred.
Still, while we're on the topic of the meat industry, the industry and farmers all agree that changes do need to be made. They're running at overcapacity. There's talk of consolidation at the marketing end or consolidation at the processing end here in New Zealand. What do you think needs to happen?
I wouldn't profess to know the exact solution, but I know that change is needed. The Meat Industry Excellence Group has done an amazing job going out around the country in a truly open, grassroots way and getting a mandate for change. They're now at a point where they need some real resource to do some business model development, to work through all the issues of legislation and trade, and I think the government should stump up and support that. Not take it over, but support it. The companies are doing their own thing. I'm concerned that they might try and cut across what is a grassroots movement. We have to make sure that the business model is suitable for us going forward. There should be one objective only for the red meat industry. And remember, it's more than just one. It's beef, it's sheep meat, it's deer, and it's goat meat. And they all probably need slightly different variations of the strategy, but the strategy should be to produce the finest quality pastoral protein for the most discerning customers in the world, because we have to be up there to get the most value from our product, because we have to ship it a long way, and we're not big in any sense of the word in terms of scale of protein production. So we're only small producers in the world scene. We've got to make sure that our products get to the very highest quality and best returning markets.
So if you were minister, would you be doing an investigation to the best solution?
I'd be working very closely right alongside these guys and asking them what they need. I think there'll be a point in the discussion where a business model is developed, where there'll be some reluctant players. They might be the meat companies, they might be some of the farmers, where a big stick is held up and said, well, look, there's a general agreement about this business model because it takes us to where we need to go, and you should come on board, and if you don't, there'll be consequences. Fonterra was formed through legislation. There must be some guidelines that ensure discipline to drive us in the right direction. And it's not saying that we know what is best, but the industry knows probably what the solution should be. It's up to government to come in and support that.
If there's a Labour-led government next year, what changes can farmers expect in terms of our primary industry?
Well, I think firstly there'll be a focus on change in monetary policy that says that the export sector is a very high concern, not just in inflation, but the export sector and job creation, really important. We have to make sure that we've got the right infrastructure in place. That includes the bureaucracy doing the right thing. We've got to make sure we've got a balanced primary industry economy. That is, that it's not all in dairying, that there are opportunities for meat and for horticulture. There are some very good horticultural products out there struggling to survive. With more development, they could probably be another kiwi fruit industry. We've got to actively engage and support those industries. I think the other key difference will be that we've got to get out, as we did, and put more rural services out in the rural areas. We've seen a shrinkage of that. Health, education, it's been shrunk back into the main centres. That makes it harder for people who live in country towns to get the support they need. And so, we'll be working in all those areas, making sure that a fair bit of the money goes back out into rural roading. It's all going into the big city projects at the moment. Those are the subtle little things that are all squeezing the industry at the moment.
And just finally, agribusiness predictions are that our farming industry in the future is going to see increasing machinery and foreign workers working on our farms. What would a Labour government do in terms of providing incentives for young people to get into agriculture?
One thing, and I've said to all the industry sector groups, we've got to sit down and work with you. You're going to have to stump up with a bit more direct incentive. There are scholarships out there should be probably more of them, so that people who want to get into agriculture, get an easier ride. If you want to go in through the armed services and get a trade or they help you through that trade, they help you through your degree, and they end up with some really great people in the armed services. We've got to look at it in the same way, that if people want to come into agriculture, there's a pathway, we help them with the cost of their study, and we give them a clear opportunity for a bright future. Actively working with them and making sure that there's a bright future and a positive outlook for agriculture is what a Labour government will do.
Mr O'Connor, thank you for your time. Well, it's time for a break now on our Point of View special coming to you from Field Days. Join us after the break and I'll be talking to the Minister for Primary Industries, Nathan Guy. Welcome back to our Field Days Point of View special, and joining me now is the Minister for Primary Industries, Nathan Guy. Minister, thank you for joining us. This year's Field Days theme is getting down to business in a global economy. How well do you think that we're doing at that?
Oh, we're doing very well. We export to around 200 countries all around the world. We feed about 40 million people. We're worth about 30 billion in exports. We've set a target of doubling that by 2025.
What has the National Government done since taking power from the Labour Party in terms of growing our exports?
Oh, we've done a huge amount in this space. We've got Primary Growth Partnership that's up and running, a lot of successful projects happening there. That's where we, as the government, partner with industry. 13 projects, $658 million invested right through from Manuka honey to red meat sector, some in the dairy sector, also in forestry and others as well in seafood. And the size of the prize there is about $7 billion by 2025 every year thereafter, so that's a hugely successful project.
As you mentioned, you have a goal of doubling the value of our exports by 2025. Many have called it ambitious. How realistic is it, and how are you going to do that?
In my view, it's very realistic, and I'll take you through how I think we can achieve it. The first point is the Primary Growth Partnership. That's worth around $7 billion in exports by 2025. Free trade agreements are going to be very, very important into the future. Of course, we've seen China, that's our most valuable market now, worth about $7 billion. We're working on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's potentially worth around $2 billion in exports a year. There's others that we're working on in terms of Russia, India and Colombia as well. Water storage, regional irrigation projects. We know there's about 400,000 hectares of land available that could be under irrigation that isn't currently. The size of the prize there about $4 billion. You add all those numbers up, that'll go a long way to getting there. And if we just get 1% of innovation technology gain across all of our primary industries, that's worth around $4 billion. And farmers, by and large, are very much innovators.
Speaking of these countries we're going after for free trade agreements, how close are we to actually getting those?
Oh, well, we work very, very closely. We've got a team of officials, international experts that are trying to land those. So it took a while with China, but we got there. Russia's, I think we're in the 9th round there. Trans-Pacific Partnership, that's ongoing as we speak. Maybe towards the end of the year we might have something landed, might be early into next year. India's on the simmer, maybe up to a boil. So that's, there's a lot of activity happening in this space.
Damien O'Connor says that your goal of doubling our exports by 2025 is unrealistic and you're not hitting your targets. What's your response to this?
Well, Labor don't care about rural communities, and that's obvious because they don't back the government's goal of doubling our exports. They're not interested about water storage projects. We've got $80 million in this year's budget to get them going out of a a total pool of around 400 million. Labor aren't interested in backing rural communities in terms of lifting our productivity. If they got into government, they have an enlarged ETS. They don't care about roads of national significance leading into our ports to get our produce into market.
But are you hitting your targets so far in achieving that goal?
Oh, we're well underway. We've just launched a document this week, the Situation Outlook for Primary Industries. That's forecasting a 7% growth over the next 4 years per year. So, of course, the government can only do so much. At the end of the day, it's farmers inside the farm gate that make the difference, processors, and of course we'll do all that we can in terms of making legislation work and removing red tape and opening up those doors internationally to get our product into market.
As you were saying earlier this week in the seminar, our exports to China have gone from $2.1 billion in 2007 up to $6.9 billion now. That's huge growth. Are we putting too many of our eggs in one basket with China?
China's a very important market to us, but so are all of those others. We've got very strong historical links into the EU and Great Britain, and of course also into North America as well. They're still very much the pillars, and they will continue to be important, but just above us is this whole Asian boom that we're very focused on. And then also Latin America. Recently went with the Prime Minister over there. There's huge opportunity for us to work closer, particularly in joint ventures with some of the Latin American countries. So in my view, we're the centre of the world, and with the global economy, we're very well connected into these international markets.
Now, the recent hold-up of shipments of our meat in Chinese ports, was it just a question of a paperwork mix-up, or was there more involved?
Well, MPI are the regulator. They're the ones that issue on average around 12,000 certification documents per week. This is their bread and butter. This is what they do day in, day out. They made a mistake in China. That's been rectified. It shouldn't have happened. It did. There'll be some learnings from this. We've got Chinese officials coming down to New Zealand soon to certify some more plants and cold stores, and that's going to be very exciting for the meat industry and our exporters. They want it. So there will be some learnings out of this, but by and large the ministry is a very high performing ministry, and you don't hear about too many of these issues having happened before. Exporters say from time to time product gets held up at the border, and I've asked my Director General to get to the bottom of what happened and come back and reassure ministers so it doesn't happen again.
Staying on the red meat companies, there's been speculation around whether the Ministry for Primary Industries will compensate meat processors. Is this something that the government's considering?
That's something that the Director General is having discussions with meat exporters about. They've never raised that with me. They've been so focused on getting their product off the wharf into market. They've been focused on resuming trade in China because it's important to them. And now they're focused on the wider certification issues when the Chinese officials arrive in the next few weeks.
You've had to deal with some quite major issues since you came in as Minister. You came into the worst drought in 70 years, and then, of course, the red meat debacle. You were thrown a bit of a hospital pass in a way, weren't you?
Well, at the end of the day, I've been around primary industries for my whole of my life. I have a farming background. I know that there are challenges all the way through. There are challenges every day. There's huge opportunities. And at the end of the day, farmers are incredibly resilient. They adapt to climatic changes very, very well, whether it's floods, droughts, snowstorms, earthquakes. They adapt to research and technology. So I've been in this space before, and I adapt to the challenges that come up on my desk on, sometimes a daily basis, and I'm really enjoying my role. A big focus for me is leading this organisation and growing our exports, and I'm really hooked into the strategy of grow and protect.
I suppose the role's not too dissimilar from being a farmer in that way.
I think it does help my farming background. Certainly when I get around the field days and other events that I turn up to, people appreciate that I know what it's like. Farming is hard work. It has its challenges, it has huge rewards as well, and very much it is the backbone of our New Zealand economy, and I get that as Minister.
And staying on the red meat industry, The industry and farmers all agree that changes do need to be made. They're running at overcapacity. There's talk of consolidation at the marketing end or consolidation at the processing end here in New Zealand. What do you think needs to happen?
Well, it's interesting. You've got the farmers mobilising at the grassroots. You've got some of the key players and the companies talking, which is good. And everyone has a different view on what the solution should be. I've always said, yes, there is an issue. Let's work through and see what a solution could look like. I think the important thing is to have the engagement between producers at the grassroots and those that are in the processing companies and doing the exporting. So yeah, there's probably a way through. We need a bit more time to work through it.
Is the government going to get behind the movement and help to change this?
Well, I've always said if a proposal hits on my desk, I'm prepared to talk. I haven't seen a proposal yet. I know there's discussions that are happening. If this was easy, it probably would have happened decades ago. You know, think about how long it took Fonterra to get formed up off a cooperative base, probably about 7 years. So we've got a bit over half the meat industry into cooperatives and then the rest are private companies.
And just finally, agribusiness predictions are that our farming industry in the future is going to see increasing machinery and foreign workers working on our farms. Is the government providing any incentives for young people to get into our primary industries?
Yeah, I reckon there's a few good initiatives that are happening now, and of course the milk in schools and the breakfast in schools, that's hugely important, not only from a nutritional point of view in terms of lifting the health and well-being of our children, but importantly there's an opportunity for children to know where does milk come from. It just doesn't come from the refrigerator. So that's an important part. Agri-Kids, which is a model that the young farmers have used now, and that's being showcased around primary schools, so that's helping children understand about farming. I think the drought has also strengthened the relationship with our urban cousins. They realised this summer the barbecue season went on way too long, and it was a bit like the whole of the North Island was sprayed with Roundup, so they got the fact that our New Zealand economy was taking a bit of a hit as a result of the drought. So there's a bridge that's been built there, which I think is hugely important. I reckon there's some other opportunities to talk about the New Zealand primary industry story, particularly into our teenagers, starting off with our children, but into our teenagers when they're starting to make a decision. Do I go to university? Do I go work on a farm? Should I do ITO? I think there's an opportunity there for us to be doing a bit more, and I've asked my officials to do some work in that space.
I'm John Watson. Thank you for watching.